Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Gift of Sex, a guide to sexual fulfillment by Clifford and Joyce Penner, narrated by Tom Parks. Disclaimer: the views expressed in this book are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the audio publisher. Preface. We would like to share with you some information about our pilgrimage from a mutual rural Mennonite heritage to where we are today. Even though we were raised 2,000 miles apart, we could have grown up in the same community. The German Mennonite tradition had a strong impact on us in the unique foods we ate, the yearly church festivals, the speaking of the Low German dialect, similar dating patterns, and common values. Those values included a hard work ethic and an expectation of setting and attaining goals, yet a strong pacifistic approach to life, and not just in regard to war. While on the one hand, we were taught to push and scramble to get what we could out of life, on the other, we were taught to pursue fulfillment of the capacities within us without trampling underfoot those around us. One example of this philosophy occurred when a lawsuit seemed the best business decision but was not pursued because, as Christians, we don't sue. This mindset about life has affected our sexual lives together. We came to marriage with the expectation that marital and sexual happiness was a goal we could strive for and attain, yet neither of us would pursue that happiness at the expense of the other. The pacifistic Christian love style mellowed out the aggressive go-after-your-goals approach to life. Another integral dimension of our Mennonite church and home emphasis was that a personal relationship with God through Jesus Christ was the necessary beginning of a Christian life. Even though there was a legalistic approach to Christian growth, one did not automatically become a Christian by being born into a Christian home or religiously following the legalisms of the church. As a result of this spirit and the strong biblical teaching we received from childhood on, we both made clear decisions at an early age to commit ourselves to Christ and His teachings. The meaning of that commitment has continued to develop in line with our understanding and experience. The going has not always been smooth. There have been and are struggles, doubts, and our own subtle, pacifistic probably, kinds of rebellion. What was probably most beneficial to our Christian and emotional development was that our childhood homes were warm, safe, family and church-centered environments. Growth and achievement were encouraged intellectually, educationally, musically, athletically, socially, biblically, and spiritually. Yet, as was typical in that era, sexual awareness and understanding received very limited, if any, encouragement. Our families were not unique in their limited sexual communication and expression. Rather, their attitude was typical of the day. So our parents were not remiss in following the standards they had been taught or that were common to their culture. Given this setting, sexual feelings or sexual behaviors were not discussed openly or freely. There was, however, direct positive instruction about growing up to be a man or a woman. Good feelings were communicated about breast development. Buying the first bra was a special event. Menstruation was well prepared for and was experienced as a positive sign of becoming a woman. Shaving, muscular development, and voice change were all welcome signs of emerging manhood. The conflict was that specific instruction about sexual interaction between men and women was either absent or limited. Instruction regarding sexual involvement within marriage was lacking. At the same time, the church, with the messages that surrounded us, clearly warned about keeping oneself pure. Rigid rules were defined for acceptable dating habits. Dating was permissible only with one of our own kind, Mennonite, promoting a narrow view of the biblical concept of being unequally yoked together. Holding hands with a member of the opposite sex was perceived as serious business. Caressing and making out were obviously unacceptable, and kissing was to occur only with the person you were sure you would marry. In fact, the feeling often came across that if you did weaken and kiss your partner on a date, such action destined your marriage to that person. The absence of positive sexual teaching, combined with the rigid rules about sexual expression, seemed designed to lead us to believe that sex between a man and a woman was questionable or non-existent. But neither of us felt that way. We are not exactly sure why we did not assume this negative stance. Probably the natural peer input that occurred in our rural, extended family type of communities allowed us to be very free-spirited as young children. At large family gatherings, with cousins of about the same age and of the opposite sex, we had freedom to roam and explore. We played fun games like jumping in the hay in the nude or playing nudist colony in the cornfields. Thus we came to adolescence rather naive, but with good feelings about ourselves sexually. But then the struggles of adolescence, the awkward sexual feelings along with the rigid controls on behavior, caused some doubt about ourselves sexually. We experienced a reduction of freedom during the growing up years. A beneficial factor was that we went through our broadening or stretching experiences simultaneously. We met during our first year at a mainly Mennonite college. From our similar backgrounds, we came together and learned as we moved away from the rigidity of our history. Together, we went through a variety of church and Christian growth experiences that brought us to where we are today. Probably our most enriching emotional input and education about sex occurred while we were attending, respectively, a Baptist School of Nursing and a Baptist liberal arts college. Through taking a class on preparation for marriage and talking with professors, we received accurate sexual data, along with warm, positive feelings about the lovemaking experience we were anticipating in marriage. It became clear to us, with the help of people we valued as sound Christian believers and mentors, that the sex drives we felt so strongly were God-given, normal, and natural. While behavioral decisions had to be made about how those urges could be handled before marriage, our sexual feelings were positively affirmed with much anticipation of their full enjoyment in marriage. Is it a good thing to have sexual relations? Certainly, but only within a certain context. It's good for a man to have a wife and for a woman to have a husband. Sexual drives are strong, but marriage is strong enough to contain them and provide for a balanced and fulfilling sexual life in a world of sexual disorder. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 1 through 2, The Message. Why the sexual part of our marriage started out so positively, we are not certain. Maybe the determination that sex in marriage could be positive was our way of rebelling against our past. Whatever the case, the sexual dimension of our marriage has, for the most part, continued to be very satisfying. This is true even though the level of our knowledge has changed with time and experience. When we look back, we wonder how our initial experiences could have seemed as satisfying as they did. But at the time, they were all we knew, and they contributed to our growing intimacy and deepening passion. That is not to say we have been without the times of sexual difficulties typical of any couple wanting enhancement. Times of varying interests, a difficult adjustment after a new baby, focusing on performance rather than on enjoyment, or adjusting to interim birth control measures. But underlying all this, we have enjoyed our sexual relationship and have experienced it as being right for us. As a result of our positive sexual experience and the questions this raised for us, during our first year of marriage, we used our Bible study time to look at what the Bible had to say about sex. We came out convinced that the Bible is a very pro-sex book. We had heard our church's message about the don'ts of sexual behavior outside marriage, and lacking a balancing positive input about sex in marriage, had generalized to the point that we thought the church's message was entirely negative. Our conclusions from this study were probably the beginning of our current emphasis on bringing a positive sexual teaching to the Christian community. After the issue was settled for us personally, we did little with it until long after we completed our formal education. Joyce received her Bachelor of Science and Master's degrees, and then taught nursing at the college level. Cliff finished his seminary and doctoral degrees, and then began private practice as a clinical psychologist. Our professional energies were focused on areas such as training lay counselors and dealing with grief, death, and dying. One day, we were asked to teach a class for seminary wives on sexual adjustment in a Christian marriage. In an initial survey of the class members, we discovered much the same confusion about sexual feelings and Christian beliefs that we had experienced. For many, this confusion had led to unfulfilled sexual lives. We took this teaching assignment with no expectation that education would produce change in actual sexual behavior and satisfaction. Assuming that such change would have to come through therapy and counseling on a much more intimate level, we saw the class as a way to help the women define their needs, if there were needs present, and find the desired professional assistance. Much to our surprise, some of the women reported dramatic sexual changes in their marriages. Others were able to enrich already good relationships. These reports demonstrated the ability of such education and communication to produce behavioral change in and of themselves. The timing was right. Word of what we had to offer spread, and the churches were ready. As a result, we have continued to share our findings and offer enhancement opportunities for couples throughout the United States and in other countries. Some couples receive help for specific problems. Others revive the spark that has been lost, and still others identify the need for further treatment. Those who identify the need for additional help may come to our offices, work with one of our associates via telephone or the Internet, or obtain a referral to a counselor or counseling team more convenient to their location. Early in the history of our sexual adjustment seminars, we realized the need to prepare ourselves further, so we pursued training from the Masters and Johnson Institute and from other experts. This specialized preparation, our personal experience, and professional backgrounds, and the fact that we have led as a team are the assets we believe we bring to the individuals, couples, families, and professionals we teach, counsel, and mentor. Our modeling as a husband-wife team and the representation of both the medical and social science fields are essential benefits to those who attend our seminars or visit our office. Working with individuals in discovering a wholesome sexuality, and with couples in finding new and more positive ways of relating sexually, has been a most rewarding calling. Whether couples come as a last-ditch effort and find relief after years and years of pain, or a newly married couple comes for just a few sessions to work out a minor adjustment issue that will prevent years of pain, the reward is incredible. Sexual retraining is short-term therapy that changes lives and relationships far beyond just functioning in bed. What have we learned about men and women and sex and marriage after almost 30 years as sexual therapists? Not long ago, our friend and colleague, Dr. Neil Clark Warren, sat us down and asked us, After all these years as sexual therapists, what have you learned that makes for a great sex life in marriage? We rambled for a couple of hours, and out of that rambling came some basic premises that you will find throughout this revised The Gift of Sex, that were either not present or not as well developed in the original The Gift of Sex. What we shared with Neil surprised him, surprised us, and will probably surprise you, because our findings go against conventional assumptions about men, women, and sex. Our most convincing finding is that men make the difference when it comes to sex and marriage. Because of the natural differences between men and women, we are convinced that the most vital factor in building intimacy and keeping passion alive in marriage revolves around the role of the man. This is true whether he has a problem, she has a problem, or there is no problem. Men may be saying, "But that doesn't sound fair." It isn't fair, but it is true. Let's back up. What has become clear in our studies and listening to thousands of couples' sexual stories is that men are simpler than women. Men are more like a stick-shift Chevy pickup truck. They are reliable and predictable, but often not too exciting. Women are more like a Maserati. They are exhilarating when they're running, but they spend a lot of time in the shop for fine-tuning. That is because women function on two tracks, the emotional and the physical. Those two tracks have to be in sync in order for the woman to be interested sexually. Men function on one track. When physically aroused, they tend to be ready emotionally. Men and women are different. Women desire sex and open up sexually when they feel loved by and connected with their husbands. Men connect and feel loved through sex. And that is precisely why it usually works best if the man starts the process of sexual change by connecting with his wife. It is the way a man loves his wife, like Christ loved the church. Ephesians chapter 5. It goes like this. The husband loves, adores, and connects with his wife. His adoration allows her to open up sexually. His affirmation ignites her passion. She invites him sexually. He feels validated, so they both end up happy. It's a win-win. For this formula to work, however, the woman needs to be able to take and to lead sexually. That is her part of the deal. To be able to take in sexual pleasure and receive her husband's affirmation, a woman has to believe that she is worthy and that she has a right to be sexual. She has to know that her body was designed not only for reproduction, but also for her sexual pleasure and satisfaction. When the woman leads with her sexuality, it works. It works because a turned-on woman is usually a turn-on to a man, whereas a turned-on man can be a demand or pressure to a woman. Women can easily feel used. Men are more likely to say, "Use me." Once the woman accepts her God-given sexuality, she leads, not by control or demand, but by listening to her body's desire, by taking in the good feelings of being touched, and then by inviting him to enjoy her body as she enjoys his. When this system of the husband loving, adoring, and connecting with his wife, and the wife taking in and leading sexually is put into practice, it is the woman who keeps sex interesting. We believe it is the combination of male constancy and ever-changing, complex femininity that keeps sex alive in marriage over a lifetime. Since the man is never truly satisfied unless the woman is, he has to go her way. When he accepts, understands, respects, and goes with her complexity, he has to shift his natural drives to compete with, conquer, achieve, and score to her process orientation. Ultimately, her way will work best for both of them. Sex will be more interesting, less results-oriented, less pressure-filled, more focused on the total person, and more deeply satisfying long-term. In addition to what we have learned about men and women in relation to sex and marriage, we have affirmed that passion in marriage will only last if pleasure is the goal. It is not arousal, not intercourse, and not orgasm that are central to a life of intimate, passionate sex and marriage. Those are likely to be the result when pleasure is the focus. But the success of a sexual experience is not measured by goal-oriented responses and actions. For pleasure to be the goal, the couple has to accept that slow is better than fast. They need to learn to take time to bring their worlds together and to enjoy each other's bodies while giving themselves to each other. We have become deeply convinced that for sex in marriage to bring the joy and fulfillment that God intended, healing from past hurts is a must. For the woman to be able to take and lead, for the man to connect with and affirm his wife, and for both to delight in the pleasure of each other's bodies, healing is a prerequisite. The time, space, and the work of healing from past trauma, such as having been raised in an alcoholic home or having been in a destructive relationship, is a necessity. And finally, we have learned during these almost 30 years as sex therapists and 40 years of marriage that sex is a lot more fun when you work at it. Our culture promotes spontaneity. Spontaneity works before marriage, early in marriage, outside of marriage, on vacation for some, in the movies and on soaps. But intentionality works best in marriage. For most couples, the anticipation of planned times builds quality. The allotment of those times increases quantity. True passion and great sex don't just happen. But we can make great sex happen in our marriages by being deliberate about what we know works. So what we've learned as sexual therapists is, men make the difference by accepting and getting with the woman's ever-changing complex sexuality. Women keep sex interesting by learning to take in sexual pleasure and to set the sexual pace for sex in marriage. Both keep passion alive in marriage by focusing on pleasure, enjoying a slow pace, healing from past hurts, and being deliberate about their sexual relationship. So, with our roots still deeply planted in our Mennonite heritage, we have branched out through our broadening church experiences, first within the Baptist community, then in a large Presbyterian church, and now as leaders and pastor in a growing multi-ethnic, urban, evangelical setting, Lake Avenue Church in Pasadena, California. Our personal life experiences and our years as therapists, speakers, authors, and involved parents and friends have also added extensively to our present views. We trust that where we are and what we have to offer will reach you at your point of interest and need. For further information, please contact Dr. Clifford and Joyce Penner, 200 East Del Mar Boulevard, Suite 126, Pasadena, California, 91105. Phone 626-449-2525. Fax 626-564-1250. Email penners@attglobal.net. passionatecommitment.com. 1. Is this book for me? With our busy lifestyle, there is little time for intimacy between my husband and me. When we do get together, we seem to lack the passion we both enjoyed before our children came along. Sex seems to have become rather perfunctory and infrequent. What can we do? What steps can we take to get some spark back? As you begin this book to hear about sex as a gift from God to be affirmed and enjoyed in marriage, you may be asking, is this book for me? If you are a couple interested in learning all you can about the God-given gift of sexuality in order to enhance your sexual experience, this book is for you. This book is for you if you desire knowledge and enrichment. When a young man and a young woman are experiencing the full flush of their love during those months just before marriage, they usually don't talk much about their sexual knowledge or experience. Rather, they hope and expect that the excitement, the joy, the delight they now experience with each other will carry over into their sexual relationship after marriage. Yet, without knowledge and deliberate preparation, like what we offer in our book, Getting Your Sex Life Off to a Great Start, many couples find they have difficulty transferring their premarital passion to their marriage. They have many questions about sex, questions that leave them perplexed. There is no easy, natural place to find the needed information. The gift of sex offers answers to your questions and provides information that is practical and will enrich your ongoing sex life as a couple. You will find your sex life will take on new delight as you listen to this book together. Our knowledge about sex and about each other is always in the process of discovery. Sex is not learned by observing others. We have not observed anyone else involved in this behavior. We have learned by reading, by talking, and by teaching each other as a couple. We are confident this book will help you in your search for knowledge and enrichment of your sexual life, resulting in the freedom to make your own discoveries in the process of learning. If you experience uncertainty or stress and want to avoid sexual difficulties, you may be unsure of yourself in the sexual act or experience stress about your sexual relationship. Stress or uncertainty does not diminish on its own. In fact, it is likely to increase if you are concerned about how you are functioning. So, you may be looking for help to gain more confidence or to reduce stress and help to avoid difficulties. One young woman was raised in the Midwest in a family that was very hesitant about anything sexual. She was convinced that all sexual feelings and responses were sinful, and so she shut down her own as a way to control her sexual actions until she married and was ready for a full sexual experience. She discovered, along with so many others, that the anxiety and tension about the sexual experience did not go away, and her feelings and responses did not automatically click on at the marriage altar. As she and her new husband began their married life together, she was anxious about how to function sexually, concerned about the various sexual activities, and preoccupied with her own lack of responsiveness. As she and her husband read The Gift of Sex together, talked about her hesitancies to be sexual, and applied what they were learning to their sexual experience, she began a process of affirming and releasing her feelings and responses. If you experience tension or uncertainty about your sexual experience, this book can help you find ways to discover all the potential God intends for you in your married sex life. If you brought sexual blocks into your marriage, you may have specific sexual blocks or habits that hinder your sexual satisfaction. These blocks may impede your sexual activities or interest to the point that your life together is jeopardized. A young seminary student found he was seldom interested in sex, even though he was clearly devoted to his wife. Deeply in love with her, he enjoyed every part of their life together, but had little interest in any kind of sexual activity. He sought help because he believed that eventually his lack of sexual interest was going to damage the marriage, a concern that was certainly justified. Much in his past led him to this position. Reading The Gift of Sex helped him gain a better understanding of what he had brought to marriage and gave him the tools he needed to seek help.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?